And here with a closer look at the Madigan Enterprise are three white-collar criminal defense attorneys who also spent time working at the U.S. Attorney's Office. They are Patrick Collins of the law firm King and Spalding. During his tenure as a federal prosecutor, he spent 4 years as the deputy chief of the Public Corruption Section. Nancy DePodesta of Saul, Ewing, Arnstein, and Lair. Before defending white-collar clients, she served as an assistant U.S. attorney and as legal counsel for the Illinois Department of Corrections. And Ron Safer of the firm Riley, Safer, Holmes, and Cancella. Before going into private practice, he served as chief of the criminal division at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Chicago. Thanks to all three of you for joining us. So, as we stated, ComEd was charged with bribery in July 2020, which was the first case that implicated Mike Madigan, but no charges were brought against him at the time. ComEd agreed to pay $200 million in fines and entered into what's called a so-called deferred prosecution agreement. Ron Safer, coming to you first, what do you think has happened here since then? Does this indictment just yesterday, does it look like a result of ComEd cooperating with the U.S. Attorney's Office?
Well, ComEd has been cooperating with the U.S. Attorney's Office from the beginning, but the individuals involved have not been cooperating, and I don't believe are cooperating. And I don't think that yesterday's indictment is the product of cooperation. They could have indicted Michael Madigan for the Commonwealth Edison part of these crimes back in 2020. But what they were doing, apparently, is putting together all of the rest of the crimes in the racketeering conspiracy.
So in this 106-page indictment, prosecutors allege that former Speaker Madigan killed the 2018 ComEd reform bill. Madigan told then ComEd lobbyist Michael McLean to, quote, work to kill the bill. McLean then emailed ComEd's CEO at the time, Ann Pramaggiore, and others saying, quote, a friend of ours gave the green light to, quote, go ahead and kill it. So, Pat, let's come to you, please. When they talk in code like that and refer to Madigan by saying, quote, our friend or friend of ours, does that indicate to you that they know that what they are doing is suspect?
I mean, that's what the government will partially argue. I mean, it's an odd way to refer to the speaker, but this use of code, which, you know, all of us did drug cases and you see code in drug cases. So I think that's what the government is trying to do. I think, you know, this issue of kill the bill, obviously the speaker can kill the bill on the merits. The real issue is he killing it because ComEd is taking care of interns in his board position and lobbyists and that sort of thing. And that's what the government's going to have to connect in the case. And what this Michael McLean is really a focal point here. The government's indicted him now twice, and it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But, you know, I do think this whole issue of killing bills, the question is there the quid pro quo, and the government's got to tie that up.
So, Nancy, coming to you, as Patrick just mentioned, Michael McLean is also facing an additional 22 counts. Does that indicate that prosecutors are really pushing to get him to flip and to give up more about his former boss?
Well, certainly I think that prosecutors have already put a lot of pressure on Michael McLean already in the hopes perhaps of getting him to flip. And from what I know, there's no evidence that he has in fact done so. So, you know, people can have all different reasons and motivations for cooperating or not cooperating. I'm not sure that adding additional charges in addition to everything that Michael McLean has already faced is really going to move the needle at this point for the government. But certainly, I think that perhaps there's always a hope on behalf of the government that they will have one defendant flip against the other.
U.S. Attorney John Lausch, again, he asked for more people to come forward yesterday and share what they know. Patrick Collins, is that normal? If he already has an indictment, is he sending a message?
I mean, I think that's now sort of what the U.S. attorneys do at all these press conferences is to basically say, you know, we want the public to come forward with any information they have. And I think that was sort of a standard sort of call out. I do think, to Nancy's point, Mr. McLean's going on trial this September with several other people that are key players. And I think it's going to be very interesting to watch that case. Judge Lineweber issued a decision recently saying the case is going forward. But there's 4 key players whose fates are going to be determined well before the Madigan case really goes closer to trial. And I think one thing to remember, government prosecutors are never done investigating until the trial happens. And there could be years before the trial happens. So the government's going to keep digging. And I do think Mr. Lausch's comment about coming forward really is in that spirit.
Ron Safer, do you need an insider to sort of tell the story to connect the dots for a jury if should this go to trial?
Do you need it? No. Does it help? Absolutely. A trial is a jigsaw puzzle, and evidence is going to come in bit by bit. So Patrick alluded to an email. There are tape recordings that will come in. And all of those bits and pieces of evidence the government's going to string together. If you do not have a narrator for that story, it becomes very difficult for the jury to get where you're going with all of it. With a narrator, with an insider, somebody to explain what was going on, helps a lot. Necessary to know helps a lot.
I do think it's, to Ron's point, I mean, it would help a lot. This indictment, 106 pages, is almost death by 1,000 cuts, but it really is missing that narrator, and it may be multiple people, and they have some tapes, they have some emails, but I don't think you convict based on emails. You do need a narrator to pull it together, at least when you're taking a shot at a guy like Madigan. So I think the government's going to keep looking for that narrator as their investigation continues.
Now, Mike Madigan, he's known as being the velvet hammer, is what he's been called. A shrewd political tactician, very small inner circle, very careful, not even using email or texting to be sure that, he doesn't get caught up with anything. Nancy, are you surprised that a person this careful and calculated could still be indicted?
I guess I can't say that I'm surprised necessarily. I think that we've known for quite some time now that Mike Madigan has been a target of this investigation. I think in an investigation involving somebody like Mike Madigan, where he's got a smaller inner circle, where he knows that he is the target of a government investigation, where he has got a very tight inner circle, it certainly is harder for the government to infiltrate that inner circle. But I can't say that I'm surprised necessarily.
So, what could this case look like going forward? For example, we discussed this last night with our Spotlight Politics team that Ed Burke's attorneys have, buried the government in motions and paperwork, and there's a lot of back and forth. It's taken a very long time to make a lot of progress. Ron, what could Madigan's defense look like going forward?
Yeah, they're going to do the same thing. They're going to have a lot of motions, a lot of delay. Michael Madigan's 80 years old. He's got X number of years left on this earth. Delay is the most certain way that he can spend a good percentage of those out of jail. So I would expect the defense will be erecting as many roadblocks to trial as they can.
Now, we know that officials at the Department of Justice, of course, they also had to approve and oversee this case because it is so high profile. Patrick, does that indicate that there is potentially enough to convict Madigan?
Well, I think, look, a case like this undergoes a lot of internal scrutiny. And so I think the government and Mr. Lausch, when he spoke yesterday, I think the standard at the office when we all work there is beyond a reasonable doubt. Is the evidence going to convict beyond a reasonable doubt? But I would argue, as somebody who's seen a lot of these, that there's some gray here. There's a lot of sequences, but they have to pull them together. So look, the government feels very confident about their case. It's a sprawling case that hangs together thematically. The question is, are the evidentiary building blocks going to hold up? And I think that remains to be seen.
Of course, a lot of us would like to think that this indictment is going to be a turning point in political corruption. Nancy DePodesta, what are your thoughts?
Oh, gosh, I hope so, right? But look, I always like to be as positive as I can be, but it's been disheartening, really, to see, and certainly surprising that with the number of convictions of high-profile public officials, whether it be governors, aldermen, state senators, state reps, it's really kind of surprising to see that people still fail to adhere to, or still, give into a bribe or engage in conduct that even brings them within the government's radar. So Gosh, I'm going to remain optimistic, but realistically, it's really kind of disheartening to see these cases continue. And,
I'm a lot older than Nancy, and I'm not surprised. Until the politicians aren't going to get it. They've proven that. Patrick indicted the governor of the state of Illinois, and he wasn't the first and wasn't the last governor. Until the people say, this is a voting issue for us. Honesty is a voting issue for us. And we're mad as hell and we're not going to take it anymore. Until they do that, they're going to get exactly what they've gotten.
We'll be having this discussion again, unfortunately. My thanks to the three of you for joining us. Ron Safer, Pat Collins, Nancy DePodesta.
Thank you.